All right, guys, we got a lot to cover here. I'm out here on Kentucky Lake and going to give you guys a quick rundown on what's going on. I'll keep it as quick as I can. We do have a lot to cover since the last time we were out here. There is, this past week, we're actually going into the last week of April now, and this past week we had the MLF Toyota Series in town. I actually fished that event, and man, the smallmouth absolutely dominated this tournament. And I kind of had a feeling that that's what was going to happen. We've seen kind of that trend this year. The smallmouth have really been playing this year, which is great to see. The largemouth were a little bit trickier. There were some largemouth caught, but it seemed like the most of them, the largemouth, I think, are trying to spawn in a little bit deeper water this year. Talking to some of the biologists, they kind of feel like we're on the tail end of the spawn. I'm no biologist, but I am on the water every day. I have a feeling there's been a good bit of fish that have spawned, but seeing the smallmouth spawn a little bit later this year, I kind of got a feeling that the largemouth are going to be a little bit later as well. But kind of what's been going on, you know, the TVA has, we all want the water to come up in the springtime. We all want it at summer pool. We want it 359, 360 so we can go flip and catch the largemouth up shallow. But TVA has actually kept the water, you know, pretty stable this year. It's been pretty good for the spawn. That's a good thing. A lot of the largemouth, like I say, I think are probably spawning out in a little bit deeper water, so therefore they didn't get up on the bank and try to spawn, lay their eggs, and then the water fell out on them. So that's a good thing. We should have a good spawn. I know for a fact that the smallmouth spawn has been incredible. Typically in the spring months, the smallmouth usually spawn, or I thought they spawned on this lake in March. But we saw with the Toyota Series, you know, it was a full-blown, not a sight fishing deal, but a lot of guys were using their active target and live scope forward facing sonar to catch a lot of those fish that were spawning. But I'm out here a lot, you know, and it was surprising to see that many smallmouth that were still spawning. You know, about the time you think you've got something figured out, those guys come in and show you, you know, you didn't exactly know what was going on. But I feel like I had a pretty good grasp on what's going on out here on the lake. It's the smallmouth have been, like I say, they've been pretty dominant this year, and we just had a huge wave of fish that came in and decided to spawn. The smallmouth are going to spawn in that 8 to 10, 12 foot range. A lot of those guys were catching, they were targeting those 8 to 12 foot range out there on the main lake. A lot of the smallmouth will spawn in the little side pockets around. If you're running down the lake, you know, you'll see, if you look at your mapping, you can find those flats. If you'll do your depth shading on my Lowrance, what I always do is I make my depth shade, I'll make it like 10 feet or less. And then that way I know those areas to look for. But they'll spawn in those little side pockets, and then they'll spawn out on the main lake. You guys follow me at all, you know, over the last few years, you know I like to fish a lot of stuff on the main lake. And those smallmouth have always spawned out there on that stuff. And you'll be in the middle of the lake and, you know, you're only looking at 4, 6, 8 foot of water on some of those places. So a lot of those fish, they spawn out there. There's a lot of wood, stumps, rock, and things like that for those fish to spawn on. And those guys that come in last week, they're really, really good with their electronics, and they figured all that stuff out. So it was really cool to see. Congratulations to Jake Lawrence on a job well done, man. That was pretty incredible to see what those guys do with forward-facing sonar. I'll be the first to admit I've got a lot to learn on it. It's changed the game for sure, but it's really cool technology, and being able to get out here and spend some time chasing these smallmouth up, you know, while they're spawning. Don't know how long this is going to last. Like I say, the weights were really good. Caught a lot of big fish. Myself, I had some bites to do okay in the tournament. I only weighed in 4 the first day, lost my 5th one, and then I only weighed in 1 the second day, but I kept losing them. And a lot of the fish that I was catching, and what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks out here chasing those smallmouth, I was catching some on a jerkbait. Those fish get to spawning on those stumps in a little bit deeper water, and you're still able to just get a reaction bite. And that's what they were doing. But when they were spawning, they were just, it almost acted like they weren't eating the bait good. They would come up and nip the bait. I was throwing the 6 cents provoke. some kind of shad color. You know, this one here, it's a little bit sunnier out here today. I'm throwing a little bit something that's got a little bit more flash to it. But those fish would come up and just nip it, and they'd come up and jump, and you'd see they just have one hook in it. But that's kind of typical largemouth, smallmouth. Whenever they're spawning like that, they'll just try to kill the bait a lot of times, just get it out of there. And I kind of think that's what's going on. I don't know, I'm no smallmouth expert, but and then a good bit of fish were caught on a swim bait. This little swim bait here, this is just a 3/8 ounce jig head. This one's made by Ignite Baits. It's called the Prey. It's a 4.1 inch, and I put that on that little jig head right there, and you can go out there and cover a lot of water with it. A lot of times, you know, those fish, the guy that won the tournament, Jake, he was talking about how he would get them fired up with a swim bait and then pitch something in there on top of it. And there were a lot of fish that were caught like that last week. So another bait that it's easy fishing, man. You can take this bait right here. This is a 6 cents. This is the Finesse, the newer Finesse jig head, and I put a Divine swim bait on it. This was the 3.2. I'll usually have a 3.2 and a 3.8 both rigged up, something a little bit bigger. Sometimes it'll cull out some of those smaller ones. But if you just want to go catch a lot of fish on Kentucky and Barkley right now, take you a spinning rod with 10-pound braid with an 8-pound leader with a jig head. It doesn't have to be this one here. Something with a light wire hook with a little swim bait, and just take it, go over on the east side, go on the west side, anywhere where there's a transition, rock transition, or like a flat that sticks out underneath the water that has wood or rock on it, and you can get some bites. You can actually get on the east side as well and just get on the gravel banks and just go down the bank on cloudy, overcast days, and you'll get you some bites. Another thing that's been kind of working out here for the smallmouth is when you get in those areas where you know they're spawning, you can kind of just fish around. If you're not that comfortable with forward-facing sonar and you just want to get in those areas, find you some areas with some wood. It can be shallow brush, it can be stumps, it can be a big boulder, rock. You know, those fish will spawn around that stuff. They want to be around something hard, and you can pitch something at them. And one thing that I'll do a lot of times this time of year is a Ned rig. This is just an owner Ned rig with a little 6 cents Ned fry on it, and a lot of times you'll see those fish swimming around those stumps, and you can pitch that out there. And another bait that I probably fish more than anything out here besides the little swim bait is just a drop shot. This is just it's got the 1/0 drop shot circle hook on it, and this is the 6 cents glitch. This is a little watermelon color that they make. And a lot of times those fish, they don't want to come up chasing something, and you can get in those areas and just kind of fish around, and you'll get some bites on that right there. Haven't done a ton of looking up shallow for the largemouth. I'm kind of one of those guys that like to wait for the water to come up, and it hasn't got up to that 359, 360 level. It's still high 358, so it's getting there. There's going to be places on the lake right now that you can actually go up and find some cover in the water. If you've heard me in the past, you know, this time of year, the farther south you go, the more cover you're going to find in the water. You can get by with that 358 and a half and go get some flipping bites. There were some fish caught shallow, that, you know, guys that were flipping. But if I was going out on Kentucky Lake right now, I've done a little bit of it. I've done it a little bit in practice last week for the Toyota event. I'm going to have two baits, and one is going to be a Texas rig. This is just a 5/16 ounce pegged Texas rig. This is the Hog Walla from 6 cents. I pitched that around like it's black and blue. Have you a black and blue, have you something a little more natural like a green pumpkin or a watermelon candy or something like that. It can be a brush hog, it can be a lizard. I know some of the guys caught some fish out in front of yellow flowers just pitching stuff like that around. But that bait right there, you can do a lot of things with it. You can make short pitches to cover. You can make long casts out in front of yellow flowers. You can make pitches out in front of yellow flowers. But there's a lot of fish that are up right now, and if you fish out here at all, you'll realize real quick the lake is slap full of fish right now. The quality is what has been a little bit trickier to figure out as far as the largemouth goes. And another bait that I'll throw this time of year for that is those fish that may have went up there and spawned that you can't quite get to. They're up there spawning, but you can't get to them because the water level has been so low, is a frog. And I'll fish that around the yellow flowers. I'll fish it in front of shady pockets, and a lot of times you'll catch a decent fish on that. You may not get a lot of bites on it. I have caught some small ones on the frog as well up there, but if I was looking to get bites, it'd be two baits. It would be the Texas rig, and then I would have me a wacky rig Cinco. And you can take those 2 baits in any pocket right now and you'll catch a ton of fish. You get a lot of bites. There's a lot of 14-inch fish in the lake right now. Very encouraging for the future. But that's kind of what's going on. We're waiting for the water level to come up to where we can go flip. That typically doesn't even happen, you know, unless we have just a crazy year, you know, of a lot of rains or something. It's usually May before it makes its way up there anyway. So I'm waiting, and I'm hoping we get a few weeks of good flipping in. But until then, if you get out, take you a wacky rig, take you a frog, take you a little pitching rod, something that you can go up shallow, fish around boat docks. There's some fish up around boat docks. You can take a swim bait up shallow, you know, cover some water with it. But name of the game here the last few weeks has been the smallmouth. I had no idea that the lake was fishing as good as it was. Like I say, I think we had kind of one of them perfect storm deals last week when the Toyota Series was here. Great to see, good to see the weights. You know, overall the weights were, you know, there were a lot of limits that were caught in that 12-pound range, which is kind of normal because, you know, the lake is not just slap full of the 5 and 6 pounders like we had years ago. But man, it's so encouraging to see the numbers of smallmouth, the numbers of 13, 14-inch largemouth that are up, you know, that are up shallow when you go pitch around up there. I think the future's bright for Kentucky Lake. Hopefully those guys come back in the future. If you guys are looking for a trip out on the water, you can contact me at info@brandonhunterfishing.com. That's my email. Check out my website. I do all the social media stuff. Make sure you come by High Tech Outdoors. Check us out. We're right there off Highway 68 before you get to Moore. So if you're in the area, we've got a full selection of 6 scents. All the stuff that I throw out here on the lake. We've got the Sims fishing gear, rain gear, and everything there. We've got a full selection of all that stuff. We're getting our Harris pontoons, Viaggio pontoons, Camus boats, Crestliner, all that. It's springtime. Everything's greened up finally. We're starting to mow the yard, and spring is here. So I'll see you guys on the water.